Hello! We have one super long story today from the Malicious Compliance of the Workplace Revenge variety. This story is a few weeks old now, but it keeps trending #1. So how could I pass up on such democratically designated greatness? When one old-timer, known for nothing but vitriol and toxicity, who you'd think would want nothing more than to stay off the radar, decides he's going to weaponize HR, well, it's a match made in heaven. Well, for everyone else, not him. Time to glove up. Things are going to get messy in Story 1. I apologize, as this came out to be a bit longer than I wanted it to. For a bit of context, I, 25-year-old female, work as part of the sanitization department for a hospital. We have multiple different positions, most of which work on upkeeping the cleanliness of the general areas of the hospital. This, as well as making sure patient rooms and other utilized areas are sanitized regularly to ensure patients and staff are protected as much as possible from environmental threats. We take out trash from nurses' stations, patient rooms, replace linen, clean the hallways and floors, as well as clean bathrooms daily. I started working about a year before the start of the pandemic, and as such, a lot of our processes have, as you can guess, changed and been more intense since. Our supervisors often come around to each floor to make sure everyone in our department is working properly and being diligent about their cleanings. My position was what we call a float worker. Essentially, I've been trained in every area and will be assigned to cover people who call in sick, or on their days off, or on vacation. This comes with a lot of hurdles, such as trying to remember what order everything needs to be done in every area. We've got approximately nearly 30 different areas. So sometimes I need to ask our supervisors for a quick refresh on things that need to be accomplished over the day, if I don't feel comfortable with my memory of the area. The downside to my position is that I won't know until I show up to work where I will be for the day. I don't mind this, as it allows me to see a vast amount of the hospital and build a rapport with nursing staff and doctors all around. Usually, if I am covering for someone's vacation or time off, I will know ahead of time, as my posted schedule will have me in their position for that time. Now, on to the story. About a year and a half ago, I was scheduled to cover one of our guys who works in the operating room, or OR for short. This was for about a month. For a little more context here, our OR team consists of 4 people. One person comes in at 6, my position, which came in at 8, and 2 other positions that come in at 9 and 11. Now, I don't mind this, as I was well acquainted with the staff there and the area in general, since for a while I was set to cover the same person at least twice a week. On top of that, working for the OR usually came with a fair bit of free time, since there wasn't a whole lot to do other than ready the room for the next patient. The stuff you were assigned to do, other than those rooms, were usually finished before your first break anyway. There was one downside. Steve, 56-year-old male. Steve was our afternoon guy. He came in at 11 and ended shift usually at 7:30, but later if the OR dictated it. He's a scumbag, the sort of person who thinks any non-straight people are just mentally ill. He has told me at least twice that I am not built for working and that I should be in the kitchen at home preparing dinner for my husband. I am a very open lesbian and he refuses to accept it. This, paired with him being the epitome of a teacher's pet, you did something just a little too slow? He called our supervisors. Overrun with work and you couldn't get to your secondary tasks right away? He called our supervisors. Went on break just a little bit late because a patient finished surgery 5 minutes before you were supposed to sit down and relax for a tiny bit? Well, you can guess what he would do. Steve was the reason a lot of people didn't want to learn how to work OR positions. If the constant calling of supervisors wasn't enough, which trust me, it is for most people, he would insist on commenting on how you did things. He would try to teach you better ways of cleaning if you weren't being absolutely efficient. He would pester people constantly, especially the women, asking them if they had done this or that. But most of all, he loved to try and boss everyone from our department around. Our other OR guys have gotten used to this by now and just ignore him for the most part. But I, on the other hand, love to mess with him sometimes, just because it's fun. The first week of my month-long stint in OR went without most of a problem from Steve, as I am normally very diligent about my work. I don't leave stuff too long to give him any reason to talk to me. The second week is where the malicious compliance truly takes place. It was one of the busiest weeks of the OR for the year, where we would normally average just under 35 cases a day in our 10-room OR. This week, we averaged 52 a day. Cases were concluding in record time as the nurses and doctors wanted to get the heck out of Dodge before any extra cases could be added. This meant that our little team of 4, myself, Steve, and 2 other guys, were cleaning a room right in time to then clean another room. This was the most stressed I'd seen any of these guys be, but Steve worst of all. At around noon, rooms were coming out and our early shift guy had just come back from his lunch, which he had to take an hour and a half late because of all the cases. We cut through the 2 rooms we had left, and I made a quick round of my area to make sure things weren't in shambles before I started to plan on heading to lunch. My area was as tip-top as it could be, so I checked the board before letting the guys know I was heading to lunch, since we had some free time before most cases came out. Everyone was okay with this, except for Steve, surprisingly. He stopped me, and this was the back and forth that ensued. "Wait, have you checked your sinks?" "Yes, scrub them before the morning rush." "How about your trash cans?" "My goodness, yes, I check them. One of them is half full, but I don't see half an hour making that full. Now can I go? I don't want to leave." "What about your hallways? Did you dust them?" "Yes, I did. Now please leave me alone. I need to get to lunch before." "How about your high dusting? Did you get—" "Steve, I'm going to ask you once and only once. Mind your business and worry about your own area." And with that, I walked away. Steve very much did not like that at all. I was 10 minutes into my lunch in the OR's break room, halfway through my food when our department director walked in. She walked over to me, tapped me on the shoulder, I had earbuds in, and told me to meet her in our office after our lunch. I asked her what it was about, and she told me we'd talk about it when I got down there. I was miffed, to say the least. I knew that little rat had probably told our director that I had hit him or something, and was going to use my little outburst as a threat that caused him undue mental harm. Or that he didn't feel comfortable working around me if I was going to act like that. Mind you, I am a 5'4", 130-pound woman who is as sweet as pie, and Steve is 6'3" and probably 230 pounds. As I was finishing my food and watching my episode, I peeked at the monitor on the wall that kept track of patients coming into the room and leaving. Every single room was currently closing up their cases, which meant that my OR team was about to get fudgin' rocked. I panicked for a moment, then I remembered what had happened with Steve, and I couldn't help myself from laughing a little bit. Cue the sweet, sweet malicious compliance. I put my lunch bag away with the other bags in the back of the break room, took the last sip of my soda as I tossed it, and walked out with a grin on my face. On my way to the elevators, I saw they had only done 1 room so far, so I assumed it would probably take them another hour and a half to get everything finished for the rooms. Steve saw me on my way out and stopped me. "OP, get your hairnet on. We have 9 other rooms that need to get cleaned." "Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. I was asked to come down to the office by our director. She had something she wanted to discuss with me and told me I had to come immediately after my lunch and to not worry about the—" "But we're getting overrun with work." "I don't see how that is currently my issue. If I don't talk with her, I might get fired for insubordination, so good luck. I'll try to be as fast as I can." And I smiled as I turned away. I got down to our office, and the director is sitting with one of our HR representatives. She motions me to close the door and sit down, so I do. Surprise, surprise. She pulled me in to talk about the fact that someone came to her with a complaint about a hostile encounter in which I made the person feel uncomfortable. A person she couldn't technically name, but everyone knew who was being talked about. I laughed a little bit and told them what had happened from my point of view. The director just kind of put her head in her hands, and the HR rep had to stifle a chuckle. It got quiet for a few moments, so I asked if I was going to lose my job over this. Our director said that originally it was going to be a strike on my record. Maybe some disciplinary action, such as taking some online courses about de-escalation of conflict and hostile work environments. Like an in-service about what to do when a coworker and you don't agree on something. But after hearing my side of the story, along with a plethora of other reports made by Steve about people in the department, she said she realized that she probably shouldn't have gotten HR involved until she heard my side of things, and dismissed both the rep and myself. As I walked after the rep, I remembered those times he looked down on me for being a woman. Instead of heading back upstairs to the disaster that awaited me, I closed the door, turned back around, and sat down. She looked up from her laptop, sighed, and asked what I needed. I just smiled and said, "I'd like to lodge a complaint about Steve." She stared at me for a few moments, then asked me to detail my complaint. Here is the list of things I had gotten her to put into this complaint: micromanagement of peers, creating a hostile workspace, unnecessary reporting of coworkers, bullying, degrading women, discrimination, misconduct. Once told me I like other women because, quote, "you haven't had a good enough guy in bed." After going through the list, providing examples and approximate dates for said examples, my director just kinda shook her head and put her fingers up to her temple. I looked at her and just said, "Bad day to be Steve?" And she nodded. "Yeah, bad day to be Steve. You can head back to work. I'll talk to him before I leave for the day." I left the office, headed back up to the OR a whopping hour later, and our OR team looked dreadful. Even our morning guy, who is in his mid-30s and has been doing this upwards of a decade, was looking rough. They just finished all the rooms. Impressive. They all looked at me, and Steve was the first to say anything. "Took you long enough, Harpy. Where were you?" "Oh, don't worry. You'll find out soon enough." My meeting with the director went well. The morning guy asked, "What happened?" "Oh, well, someone complained about me being aggressive, and it ended up turning into a conversation that would definitely eliminate the hostile work environment here." Steve was smiling. "Good. Last thing we need is someone to feel uncomfortable up here." "Oh, of course, Steve. Wouldn't want anyone to feel attacked or anything, right?" "Also, Steve, I had a question for you. Have you checked your break room yet? Last I saw, the trash was overflowing onto the floor." Steve left in a panic, and the other three of us laughed. The fallout. Now, so far it might seem like this belongs on Nuclear Revenge, but sadly, the fallout wasn't what I was hoping. But it was still sweet to hear. I was informed from our director about what had happened with Steve. Since I was the person who levied the complaint, I was entitled to hear about any actions taken in an attempt to let me see that action was taken on my behalf. She said he would have been outright fired if I wasn't the only one who levied these complaints. While they took it seriously regardless, without other women stepping forward to say anything, they couldn't fire him off of my complaints alone. That being said, Steve was still reprimanded hard and was slapped with 2 strikes. 3 strikes get you fired. Also, a year worth of online learnings and in-service trainings for things such as discrimination, etc. He was also told, if it was reported he said anything close to what he said to me again, he would be fired and blacklisted from hospitals in the state. In good news, since then I have become a lead for our day shift. While I maintain my float status, covering people who were sick and whatnot, I did gain a few more dollars an hour, some leadership responsibilities, and most important of all, a fancy title to tell Steve to fluff off with. In the comments, Evelyn said, "Hope you followed it up again with a report of him calling you names when you got back." OP replied, "Nah, I felt the coming storm was enough for him. Plus, I didn't blame him after him busting his behind an hour straight. I probably would have said something similar, haha." Jenna said, "Love this story, but I can't fathom why no one else came forward about Steve, or why you didn't lodge a complaint about him before then. No one should have to take that kind of treatment." OP replied, "I would have. Definitely thought about it a few times, but I grew up with thicker skin, so most of that stuff didn't bother me. It was hindsight that told me I should do it for other coworkers instead of myself." Lemonhead Queen said, "You are my hero. Thank you for ensuring hospital sanitation and getting Steves in line. I will forever name people like this Steve." OP replied, "It's a humble job, and I weirdly love it. I always said that cleaning is like spiritual healing, cleaning out the dirty and leaving yourself with a clean slate. So long as I live, I will make sure all Steves know where the line is and not to cross it." Smarmy Smug Steve. Sounds like a real treat to work with. You'd think he'd want to stay away from HR as he runs amok with all his toxic shenanigans. This type of ignorant hypocrisy does not like being called out. So I suppose it's not entirely surprising that he thinks he can use HR to put little OP in her place. But surprise, mother trucker, you were got. And I don't think Steve is long for that job, now that he's on HR's radar. HR will focus in on him like an ant under a magnifying glass in an unseasonably warm summer. Hopefully, Steve wears sunblock. And that's it for today. Until next time, shine bright, Starlight.
Yahoo!
If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.